Hi there, I'm Jeremy Chavis with Faribault Vacuum and Sewing, and today we want to show you the new Pro Stitcher Lite software with Wi-Fi capabilities and a couple changes that were made just to kind of simplify it for those of you that are switching over to the new software from August of 2023. And it's really not a whole lot different, but it is easier to use. There are a couple less steps, and so we want to show you what those differences are for your new software. So I'm going to start out. I'm going to go to area. I'm going to bring my machine up to the upper left-hand corner of my frame past my quilt. Almost like my embroidery hoop is larger than the design that's going to fit in the embroidery hoop. And I'm going to click frame space. It's going to ding at me and it's going to mark my frame space point. Now this is probably the most misinterpreted step on the new software. On the previous software, when you click frame space, your two corner for your frame space would actually appear on the right hand side and you'd select your actual point from over there. It eliminated that step. I just clicked my frame space there. It marked my spot. Now I'm going to bring it over to my lower right hand corner past my quilt. And I've got these patent pending side leaders over here. I'm just going to go over to my side leaders. Helps to keep the throat of the machine from rubbing on your side clamps, especially in this instance where we've got the ruler base table on there. Just gives us more flexibility when working on the edge of the quilt. So I'm going to mark my lower right hand point with my frame space. I'm going to hit the zoom frame button to show my frame space there, which is the area in which my quilt and my design will fit. And now I'm going to go mark the upper left-hand corner of my quilt with my two corner button. That marks the upper left-hand corner of my quilt. So I've got a burgundy quilt frame, or kind of a reddish maroon quilt frame. Now I've got a pink point there for my quilt area. I also noticed the orange crosshairs. That's where my needle is on the quilt. I'm going to come over here to the lower right-hand point of my quilt area, and I'm going to hit two corners again. Now when I move my crosshairs, notice I've got that quilt square or rectangle inside the frame area or rectangle. Notice also the top of my quilt area does not go past or run into the frame space that I created. So this particular sample quilt is 90 inches high. We've marked it at 46.2 inches wide, but I'm going to change my height to the 90 inches there. And so now if I hit the home refresh zoom button, it shows my quilt area within my frame space, especially at the top where I'm going to start quilting my first row in just a moment here. So now I'm going to go to File, Design, Open, and I've got over 250 built-in designs. These are my continuous line designs, and the list goes on. I've got blocks, corners, triangles, and then a number of designer blocks from Martha Higdon, Mary Beth Crapel, Linda Goslin. The list goes on. There's tons of built-in designs. You can also purchase designs online. I believe it's the HEQ format that works with your Pro Stitcher Lite. So we're going to just pick a simple continuous line. When in doubt, cancel. Open my designs. And I'm just going to do the apple leaves. You've seen me use the apple leaves before. We get less stitches and more time to play and learn. So I'm going to open the apple leaves. Now you see here I've got a small design right there in the upper left-hand corner of my quilt. So I'm going to modify. Actually, I'm going to repeat, and I'm going to I'm going to give it 4 horizontal designs, and I'm going to hit stretch, which looks like a ladder. It's no longer marked stretch on the new software, but I think that's a little bit too wide. I'm going to stretch it with the plus minus to 5 horizontal designs, and then I'm going to go vertical, and I'm going to try 11 just to see what happens. We'll stretch that. That looks pretty good. Notice my top row fits in my quilt area and completely within my frame space. My second row gets interrupted by the bottom of my frame space, so I'm not able to actually bring the machine down to finish this second row. So we're going to be doing a drop and drag. I'm going to go to Pro Stitcher. Notice the quilt button is activated or highlighted in green. I'm going to click the baseline button to get my tablet, machine, and carriage to talk to each other. And I'm going to save my design in case we break a thread or have to shut it down for any reason or anything like that. So it just saves this design in that size so that we don't have to recreate it from scratch and guess at what we entered in there. So I'll click Save, Selected, which is my selected design, and it's called Repeat Apple Leaves. I am going to just name it Repeat Apple Leaves Sample and save that. So now that's set. Again, go back to Pro Stitcher. Quilt is highlighted. My run button is enabled, so we're ready to start. It tells me that my air stitch, my tie off start is off, my end is off. So I'm going to put my tie off start and finish on, my pull up pause on. So notice everything went from red to green in my settings. That's how I like it for the way that we quilt. And I'm going to hit the proceed button. It's going to bring me over to that green X for my start point. It's going to do a pull up to tie off. It's going to prompt me to pull up the thread and press resume to continue. So I am going to pull that up until I have my top and bottom independent of each other. X out of the prompt to pull up and hit the green resume button. And it's going to begin with the 5 stitch tie off. Trim my excess slack there. I like to leave about 1/2 centimeter, 3/4 centimeter so I can see where it started, but I can always go back and trim those later. So we just finished our first row. We're going to do a long jump pause. We're going to do a drag and drop to advance our quilt and begin stitching the second row so we can continue on throughout the rest of the quilt. So for my long jump pause at the end of my row, I'm going to pull the machine 6 to 10 inches towards me. I'm going to grab in the middle here, bring it back to the point where it finished the first row. And I'm going to put my needle down and up to grab both threads. It'll actually give me the appearance of having 3 threads under there because one of them's kind of folded over, and that creates a tight knot. And I left a little shorter than I normally do, but you can still see where I got it tied there. And those points can be helpful if you need to restart or check something over or move your design later on. But I'm going to X out a long jump pause because I did so. I'm going to bring my machine to the lowest point on my quilt design. Now I've visually inspected and I like where my needle is on the point on my quilt, but I'm going to actually zoom in, and there's a few different ways to do that. For this particular task, I'm going to click on the zoom button on the side ribbon, and I'm actually going to draw a square across my crosshairs, and you can see as I zoom in, it really magnifies and amplifies the pinpoint precision needle placement on that design. So as I zoom in further and further, you see I'm probably 1/10 of a millimeter off the tip of the petal And so I can just tap it over, tap it down, and get really on the spot of my needle on the point of my design. So I'm going to put the needle down. I'm going to turn my drop and drag on above the grid on the side tab, side ribbon, and that highlights and changes to drop. I'm going to pull my bungee side clamps and my side leaders. And if you get one of these machines from us, we're going to get you these side leaders to help you keep your quilt taut all the way across. And now, notice the hammock for the batting and the hand wheel crank and the extra bungees. It just makes everything work together in unison. So now that we've got the side leaders off, we've got the drop and drag on, we've got the needle down, we're gonna crank it and we're gonna watch our screen here. So I'm gonna hit the house to refresh because I don't wanna look at just the tip of that pedal. I wanna look at my whole design. And as I advance that, you see the design move throughout the frame, and I want to keep my crosshairs and design for my next row all within my frame space there. So it looks like row 2 is in a good position in the center of my frame and ready to go. So I'm going to turn my drop and drag back off. I'm going to bring my needle back up, make sure that I don't have my tail tied to the underneath side of the quilt. Get that straightened out a little bit, and I'm going to repin my side leaders. We also got the red snappers and got that all set up tight, and we wound up the back and the batting and the top and got that all square to the machine and the world. You want to make sure that your side clamps are flat and not too tight. I've got that all clamped nicely, and I should just be able to go back to Pro Stitcher. My quilt is highlighted, my run status is enabled, and I should just be able to hit resume. Hold my tail here, the machine will wander back to the green start point on the second row. It'll drop the needle. It'll prompt me to pull up the thread. I will just move the machine aside, grab both. X out. I will hit resume. And that's all there is to it. We're off to the races. If you have more questions about custom quilting or setting up your designs, feel free to give me a call, 507-210-2939. I'm Jeremy with Faribault Vacuum and Sewing. Thanks for checking out our video.